In an age of infinite noise, the most powerful weapon is a quiet mind. This is the chronicle of a man who stopped chasing the echoes of the world to discover the symphony within himself. This is the path of the focused. Chapter 1. The Scattered Gears. In the soot-stained heart of Oakhaven, Kaelen's workshop was a cathedral of unfinished dreams. High-arched windows looked out over the copper district, where steam whistles shrieked every hour and the rhythmic clack-clack of horse-drawn carriages on cobblestone created a relentless metronome of chaos. Inside, Kaelen sat hunched over a mahogany workbench scarred by years of slipped tools and spilled oil. Before him lay the Aurelian chronometer, a watch intended to track the lunar cycles, but it was currently nothing more than a hollow gold shell and a scatter of brass teeth. His process was a cycle of false starts. He would pick up a magnifying loupe, determined to set the escapement wheel, a task requiring surgical precision. But then, a hawk would shadow the window, and Kaelen's eyes would follow it. He'd wonder where it was flying, then remember he hadn't bought bread for dinner, then realize his tea had gone cold. By the time his focus returned to the workbench, he'd forgotten which screw he was reaching for. The mind is like water, Kaelen, Master Aris said, leaning against the doorframe, his shadow long and heavy. In a storm, it reflects nothing. It sees only the waves. You are trying to build a masterpiece while your soul is a hurricane. Aris pointed to the dozen other projects gathering dust. A half-sprung music box, a dismantled sextant, a locket with no hinge. You have the itch, the master continued. The moment a task becomes difficult, your brain hunts for a distraction to soothe the frustration. You aren't working, you are just twitching in the direction of work. Kaelen felt the sting of truth. His desk was a physical map of his fragmented attention. Every unfinished gear was a moment where he had chosen the easy thought over the hard focus. He realized that if he stayed in this room, he wouldn't just fail as a watchmaker, he would lose the ability to ever see a single thought through to its end. Chapter 2. The Monastery of the Silver Pendulum. The trek to the Monastery of the Silver Pendulum was a physical manifestation of Kaelen's mental struggle. Each step up the jagged ether mountains felt like a battle against the mental itch, the urge to turn back, to check the time, or to find a distraction in the scenery. When he finally reached the Great Hall, he expected a library of ancient scrolls or a sage with secrets. Instead, he found a room of absolute, punishing minimalism. In the center hung a massive, polished silver weight on a wire so thin it was almost invisible. It swung in a perfect, slow arc, left, right, left, right. The head monk, a man whose face looked like carved teakwood, gave Kaelen his only instruction: sit. Watch. Do not follow. For the first hour, Kaelen felt a strange novelty. By the second hour, the agony began. Without the steam whistles of Oakhaven or the clutter of his workbench, his brain began to manufacture its own noise. He remembered an argument with a grocer from 3 years ago. He started counting the stones in the wall. He felt an itch on his left shoulder that became a psychological scream. His mind was a caged animal, pacing the bars of silence. Every time the pendulum swung, Kaelen's thoughts jumped. How long has it been? Is Aris laughing at me? I should have brought a book. He realized that his focus in the city wasn't focus at all. It was just his brain jumping from one bright light to the next. Here, there were no bright lights. There was only the silver weight. The pendulum does not care if you are bored, the monk whispered from the shadows. Boredom is simply the ego's way of saying it is no longer the center of attention. You are trying to kill time. Instead, try to be the time. By the end of the first day, Kaelen's eyes were bloodshot. He hadn't mastered anything, but he had made a vital discovery. His brain was an addict, and distraction was its drug. He wasn't fighting the world, he was fighting a withdrawal. He sat back down, cleared his throat, and watched the silver weight swing again, waiting for the storm inside to run out of rain. Chapter 3. The Breath of the Bellows. On the fourth day, the silence of the pendulum hall was broken. The elder monk, Brother Kaelen, led Kaelen to the mountain forge, a chamber carved directly into the volcanic rock. The air was thick with the scent of sulfur and the roar of a furnace. You have seen the stillness, Kaelen said, handing Kaelen a heavy set of leather bellows. Now you must learn the rhythm of the fire. The task seemed deceptively simple. Keep a small pile of coals at a constant, glowing orange. If the fire turned white, it was too hot. If it turned gray, it was dying. Kaelen began to pump the bellows with the same frantic energy he used at his workbench in Oakhaven. Within minutes, his arms ached, his chest heaved, and the fire flared wildly before choking under the blast. You are fighting the air, Kaelen observed. You are treating this task like a sprint. Focus is a marathon of moments. Kaelen stopped. He wiped sweat from his brow and looked at the coals. He realized his mind was already miles away, wondering what he would eat for dinner or how many days were left in his training. Every time his mind drifted to the future, his grip on the bellows tightened or slackened, ruining the temperature. The breath is the anchor, Kaelen whispered. If your mind is in the clouds, your hands will be in the storm. Match your pull to your lungs. Kaelen closed his eyes for a second, then opened them, fixing his gaze on the very heart of the ember. He began to breathe, deep, rhythmic draws. In, pull, out, push. He stopped trying to achieve a result and started simply inhabiting the action. The transformation was physical. The burning ache in his shoulders faded into a dull hum. The roar of the forge became a song. For the first time in his life, the itch to look away vanished. He wasn't bored, he was engaged. The orange glow of the coals stabilized, becoming a sun in the center of the room. He had found the flow state, the place where the doer and the deed become one. He stayed there for 4 hours. When he finally let go of the bellows, he wasn't exhausted. He felt more awake than he had in years. He had learned the second great secret. Focus is not a wall you build, it is a fire you tend. Chapter 4. The Fortress of the Hour. Returning to Oakhaven was like diving into a freezing lake. The city hadn't changed, the steam whistles still shrieked, the newsboys still shouted, and the smell of coal smoke hung thick in the air. But Kaelen was no longer the man who had left. He walked into his workshop and saw it with new eyes. It was a graveyard of open loops. Every unfinished watch was a leak in his mental energy. Following the lessons of the Mountain Forge, he didn't try to fix everything at once. Instead, he began building his fortress of the hour. First, he cleared the physical clutter. He boxed up every project except the Aurelian chronometer. One fire at a time, he whispered. He hung heavy velvet curtains over the windows to muffle the street's chaos, creating a sanctuary of soft, filtered light. The hardest part was the silent covenant. He established a rule. For the first 4 hours after dawn, the door was barred. No deliveries, no idle chats with Master Aris, no checking the pneumatic mail tubes. On the first morning, the itch returned with a vengeance. His hand reached for a nearby newspaper. His mind screamed that he was missing something important. He felt the phantom vibration of a notification that wasn't there. But then, he remembered the bellows. In, pull, out, push. He picked up a tiny brass escapement wheel. Instead of worrying about the finished watch, he focused entirely on the singular tooth he was filing. He noticed the grain of the metal, the microscopic curls of brass falling away, the resistance of the tool. Suddenly, the clatter of the city faded. The velvet curtains seemed to expand until the workshop was the only thing in existence. 2 hours passed in what felt like 20 minutes. He wasn't trying to focus, he was simply refusing to leave the moment. When Master Aris finally knocked at noon, Kaelen looked up, dazed but exhilarated. The escapement was perfect. He had reclaimed the most valuable territory in the world, the space between his ears. He realized that the fortress wasn't the room, it was the boundary he set for himself. Chapter 5. The Masterpiece Unveiled. The morning of the great exhibition, Oakhaven was a riot of noise. Brass bands played on every corner, and inventors boasted of clocks that could steam vegetables or calculate the stars. Kaelen sat in his small wooden stall, his masterpiece, the still point, resting on a velvet cushion. The watch was an anomaly. It didn't chime, it didn't have a swinging pendulum or glowing lights. It was a sphere of pure, hand-polished crystal, revealing a movement so precise that the gears seemed to glide on air. As the judges approached, led by the chief horologist of the realm, a sudden commotion broke out. A steam pipe in a neighboring stall burst with a deafening crack, sending white clouds and shouting spectators everywhere. Panic rippled through the hall. Inventors scrambled to protect their delicate machines. Kaelen felt the familiar jump in his chest, the old urge to look away, to join the chaos, to let his mind shatter. But he closed his eyes for a single heartbeat. In, pull, out, push. He anchored himself to the steady, silent rotation of the escapement wheel in his hand. When he opened his eyes, the smoke and shouting were just background noise, as distant as a summer storm on a far-off mountain. The chief horologist watched Kaelen. He didn't look at the watch first, he looked at the watchmaker. He saw a man who was entirely, unshakably present. Every other builder here has made a machine to catch the eye, the horologist whispered, leaning in to see the silent gears. But you have built something that commands the mind. How does it make no sound? It makes a sound, Kaelen replied softly, his voice steady amidst the lingering alarms. But it only speaks to those who have learned to listen. It is the sound of a mind that has stopped fighting itself. Kaelen didn't just win the golden gear that day. He realized he had achieved something greater. He was no longer a slave to the shimmer of the world. He returned to his workshop, opened the velvet curtains, and let the city's noise wash over him. It couldn't touch him anymore. He was the master of the flame, the silent weight, and the single room. He was finally, truly, focused. Your fortress of the hour is waiting to be built. Kaelen's journey proves that focus isn't a talent you're born with. It's a muscle you build through intentional resistance. Now, it's your turn to light the forge. 1. Identify your Aurelian chronometer. Pick the one project or skill that matters most to you right now. 2. Enter the silent covenant. Commit to just 25 minutes of uninterrupted work today. No phone, no tabs, no quick checks of the news. 3. Find your anchor. When the itch to distract yourself strikes, and it will, simply breathe, acknowledge the thought, and return to the single gear in front of you. Don't let your mind be a sparrow in a storm any longer. Start your first deep hour right now and reclaim the machinery of your mind.